Hello, everyone. I am here today to talk about an album that the general public is probably sleeping on quite a lot. So, there isn't just one Adele that hails from the UK who is here to take the music industry by storm with really insightful, powerful, soulful vocals and lyrics. And of course, no, I am not talking about the Adele from London that we all know and love. I'm talking about a different Adele who does not go by that name because obviously it would be a bit difficult to have that name in music. I'm talking about Adele Emily Sandé. She goes by her middle and last name. She is a Scottish singer. She's from Aberdeen, and she is this tour de force in this decade for pop music. That is, she made her big breakthrough in the early 2010s with her first record, and especially in the UK. I mean, it did really, really well. And she got a little bit of traction in the US as well, but since that time, it's definitely been more under the radar. But she should be as big as other acts like Beyonce or Alicia Keys. She is the perfect sort of blend of soul and poetic lyricism, charismatic personality, great stage presence, artistic visual direction. Um, and, she doesn't have to strip down to, sell her music. All of that aside, Emily Sandé is a real breath of fresh air, but I can see, unfortunately, why she slept on by the mainstream. This new album is titled Real Life, and it is their third studio album. I have reviewed her first two records, which Our Version of Events, which was her big debut, and her most recent record, Long Live the Angels. I have reviewed both of them on this channel, so I highly recommend. I'll link it in the description. You check out those reviews if you are interested. She also released an EP a little under 2 years ago called Kingdom Coming, which I always meant to review on this channel and I never got around to it. I actually really love that EP. It was a little bit more hip hop and a little bit more urban of her sound. So it was a little bit of a change up. But if you listen to Long Live the Angels, the album that came out a year before, you could tell that that was sort of a direction she was experimenting with. Whereas her first album was, I mean, there were urban influences, but it was much more, pop record with a lot of soulful, slight R&B influences. And then her newest record is a little bit more of a return to that sound. It's a little bit similar in sound to her first record. However, it does keep a lot of some of the more acoustic sensibilities of her second. But the songwriting, I mean, it's Emily's music is very inspirational, and it is very much about, hope and love and triumph over, adversity. She makes music for the oppressed. She makes music for the, neglected, makes music for introverts. She, is someone I think I could really vibe with if we got into a good conversation. Like, I really am interested in her, worldview, and feel very similarly. I think that she is just this beautiful, kind soul that's just too pure for this earth. Like, I feel like so many of my favorite artists are. And on this record in particular, I can tell that she's really sort of letting, I think, a lot of the sort of artifice of the pop star down. I think on her first two records, she was, she was always herself and she was always authentic. But I think maybe it was her record label, but there was a bit of a push for her to be, to be like Mary J. Blige, or to be like Alicia Keys, or to be like Beyonce, or to be like someone, And I think that there was a little bit more of like a sort of freeness to this album in the way she's like letting her hair, like letting her hair just be natural, dyed. It's gorgeous. Like, she's feeling like a lot more sort of like down to earth and homely. Not that she ever wasn't down to earth, but like this album in particular, it's not pretentious in any way. Like, it's actually quite understated. It's very simple too. Like, the ideas and cores and themes of this record are things she's explored before, but I think on this record you can tell there's this earnest sincerity behind it where it's just like, I don't really care about making money anymore off of this stuff. Like, I just want to make music to help people feel good. I want to motivate people. I make music for my fans. I know that they will find it and they will resonate and it'll help them. And I really don't care about being this pop star anymore. I can just be this artist who like puts out music for myself and for the world, and hopefully the right people who resonate with it will come together, and it kind of just is this beautiful, community that is built through that. And so real life is, like the title says, pretty real of a record, I would say, in that it feels, I don't know if it's necessarily the most as stripped back as I actually expected it to be. I was expecting this album to be very stripped back. It still has some really interesting produced elements to it, and it definitely has these big pop moments that you could see doing really well on the radio. And you know what? They would have done well on the radio in the past, but just in the current situation that we're in pop music, this kind of stuff is not going to be on the radio for better or for worse, and it's just what it is. Like Sam Smith, I don't even think would be on the radio anymore. Like we're not in, like this soulful kind of like, it's not. I mean, Adele is like the only artist who is like, and even when Adele does come back, and a lot of people are saying she's going to come back this fall, I will be really interested to see how well she actually does compared to her past, releases, because I mean the stakes are so high for her. You can't keep that up forever. So, the pop music landscape is always changing. Um, there's definitely a distinct gospel tinge to this record. Again, that's not necessarily new territory for her. There's always been a little bit of a place in gospel in her music, but it doesn't feel like overdone to the point where you could consider it a gospel record. It's a beautiful blend of, like I said, R&B, soul, traditional pop, some alternative, acoustic. It's just got everything. And I'm not the hugest gospel or R&B fan, but I really appreciate the way she blends those genres together. I mean, similar to what Beyonce does, which I do think is done pretty well from some of these big artists. And it helps you kind of dip your toes in R&B and soul without it being like completely that. Because I do like my pop sensibilities. I like that production and rhythm and the big choruses and stuff like that. I never reviewed any of the singles that have been released leading up to this album. The first single came out back in March, and I was meaning to review it, and I never got around to it. And then eventually the album was supposed to come out this past June, actually. And I didn't even realize until a week before that this album had been pushed back all the way till September. So, this album was delayed significantly. But, I think it all in its own divine timing, right? Like it wasn't, too long of a wait from her last record, especially since she gave us an EP 2 years ago. So I ain't complaining. It's finally here. We got 11 tracks. Let's go into the track by track. Let's talk about this record. The leading track, Human. A soulful song that slowly builds and builds over what feels like a very melancholic melody. Basically a uniting kind of song to just share in our grief and in our struggle in this life. We all are human. We all go through things. These are simplistic, straightforward lyrics, but again, I think so much of it is her delivery. And if you haven't heard the song, me saying the lyrics will probably be like, oh, that's nice. You have to get the whole package. And that's not to say that there aren't sometimes moments where I do wish she pushed her songwriting just a little further in terms of more sort of poetic license. But at the same time, when she does do it, it's very well considered. I don't think that she's the type of artist where I necessarily need it to be always about the lyrics hitting so much beyond just like the straightforward, like say it like it is. That's what soul music has always been about, like it's not necessarily always drafted in these elusive metaphors. And there might be moments where I do wish the songwriting went there a little bit more instead of being so straightforward. But at the end of the day, I mean, like this music is meant for people, like it's meant to be accessible. Even though the general public is going to sleep on it, it's meant to be accessible because it's needed in society. This is stuff that we need to hear. Rich or poor, young or old, we are all out here trying to save our souls. We're all learning. We're all human, no matter what color of your skin. It feels like, we've trod this territory before a million times with any sort of like, universalist message of an uplifting type of song. And so in terms of groundbreaking lyricism, yeah, maybe not on this track. But the melody really carries the message home for you. And there's a nice little prayer interlude spoken by a child. I'm not entirely sure if this is a recording of her as a child or if this is a family relative of hers. Um, but praying to God, thanking God for the love that they've received, thanking them for their family and the friends. Guard me in the dark of the night, and in the morning, send me your light. I mean, ain't that what we all need? Track number 2, Love to Help. This is a stripped back moment on this record. And I think, like the song title illustrates, Emily is making music to heal and to help. Especially today, it's like just it's a really dark world out there. Like the state of things, like there's a lot of beautiful things happening, but there's like a lot of like dissonance with like this darkness in terms of geopolitics and like social issues and like all of these things. So we all need a shoulder to cry on. And of course, for this song, she's singing to a partner, presumably a male partner, who might be this like big, strong guy. She sings, "I know that you're a soldier, but pull down your wall and let me get closer so that I can, be there for you. And I want to see your vulnerability." So this is ultimately a plea for someone to open up. But it's not like, a desperate plea. It's just like a suggestion, and it comes across just like silky smooth and inviting. I love the line, "When life isn't fair, this ain't no fairground. Sometimes it's clear, sometimes it's gray clouds. If you won't get up, I won't let you fall down. I'm right here waiting by the phone." Emily does seem like that friend that, like, at the end of the day, you just know is always going to be there for you. Those are the types of friends and romantic partners that you want in your corner, because we need more people like that. I also feel like Emily would be an amazing listener. Like, I just can sense by the way she, expresses herself in interviews and the way she, writes her songs that, like, she really cares about, like, understanding people. Track number 3, "You Are Not Alone." Probably one of the more gospel sounding songs on this record, and of course, very uplifting, so positive, with just the simple piano and soulful vocals at the piano, and then introducing the choir around her of like all the voices. Are you sick and tired of being lied to, getting kind of bored of being ignored? Can't find the tribe that you belong to? Well, my friend, you are not alone. This song is asking for that sort of release when you feel like you've been looking for answers for so long. I think that I don't almost feel like I have much more to say about some of these songs because they are so straightforward. Um, and, normally I would say that's a bad thing, but for her, like I said, like you've got to listen to just the way she triumphantly proclaims these lyrics because although there are some instances where I do think that, I mean, I'm not saying that like she isn't suited for high notes, but I do think that she is much stronger in her chest voice. And when she tries to, you can tell she's more of an alto, I would say. You can tell that when she's reaching for some of those higher notes, it's like obviously a strain for her, but honestly, it's that emotional imperfection that I think really carries like a lot more emphasis. Like I think that we don't need her to hit every single note perfectly, even in the studio cuts. We like the raspiness. We like the voice breaking a little bit. We like hearing that there's like real energy and emotion behind these vocals. And track number 4, "Shine," is another song like that. This was actually one of the lead singles off of this record. And it has a really cute video. And, it definitely feels like the one song that I was like, this is the single. This is the song that she wanted to promote as like the radio song. And like I said, this song could have done really well in the past, I think, on radio. But, it does feel to me like a little bit subpar to some of the songs she's done in the past. Some of her earlier records are just the formula, it just works so well. And for this song, I feel like there are parts of it where the formula might feel just like a little tired. Like we've heard this before. But I can't fault it for that. Like I said, it's unabashedly positive. We all need a little bit of that. I mean, some people might, and it depends on the state of mind you're in, might look at some of these songs and listen to them and be like, that's nice, but that's just not where I'm at right now. And trust me, I feel that a little bit too. I'm like, this album is coming from a place that I really wish I was, but I'm not there yet. And I don't even know if Emily's truly there yet. Like, I honestly can't tell sometimes if she's really making these songs to kind of almost force that positivity, which sometimes forcing positivity, like, so inorganically isn't the right way to go about it. It actually just makes you resent it more. But I can see herself sort of being like, especially in this time and frame of mind, like, I just have to focus on the positive. I want to write happy, uplifting songs. It's what I need right now. I got to write them myself. So maybe she's not necessarily, and of course, we don't always feel this positive. But it's also about liberation in general. Express yourself. It's good for your health. There's nothing to fear when truth walks beside you. Light up your heart, light up the dark. Amen. Okay. The best song on this record, by far for me, the lead single that I've been wanting to talk about for so long, Sparrow. One of the songs that I think has the most unique production on this record. It's got this like airy synth keyboard that crashes down and builds and builds. And her voice is so powerful on this track. And yet at the same time, there's a refinement. She's holding herself back and then letting herself all out. And like I said, this song was released back on March 11th of this year. So I've been holding off talking about it for quite some time. I've got wind beneath my wings. I think this time I'm going to make it till morning. I got strength within my heart. I'm going to sing for all the heroes who've fallen. I'm going to take the long way home. Yes, I'm going to take the world by storm. That's the strong chorus that you can really feel. It's like a marching song in a lot of ways because you've got this like nice skittering kind of drum percussive beat in the background. This song is all about like building something. It's about building the energy and uplifting and creating that uplifting energy to tackle the future ahead, and understanding that like you're not necessarily taking the easy way. Like the choices you've made, they might not be the easiest choices, but they're the right choices for you. So it's going to be a long, bumpy ride, but you've got the wind beneath your wings. You're feeling that strength. You're feeling charged up. And with the heart of a sparrow, tell me what arrow could ever bring you down. She sings in the bridge. Oh, the escape, it was narrow, but what a gift. The gift, the courage you found. I mean, you can just hear the salvation in her voice. I think, again, like, this song is just everything in an Emeli Sandé song that I love. And it's, like I said, it's equal parts experimental, equal parts traditional R&B soul with some gospel tinge, a bit of an African spiritual vibe in parts. I mean, no matter who you are, you have to feel the power of this track. And a really amazing chorus and melody. It really soars. It really soars. Best track on this record by far. Track number 6, Honest. We may live again, but hey now, maybe not. So if you love someone, give it all you've got. Time is easy spent, but it can't be bought. So stop acting as if tomorrow's promised. Stop acting as if you can't be honest with yourself. I think this song really catches in its stride during the bridge. She really does something I think we've never fully heard from her before, which I think is really taking a nod out of, some of the really classical soul divas of the past and just letting this build up vocally sort of soar. Breathe in, breathe out, don't hold it in, let fear fall down, let love begin, be brave, be bold with no regrets, try something that scares you a bit, write your own song and sing it loud. This bridge just keeps layering and upon layering upon layering, and there's key changes, and it's just building that existential energy. And so I think that that's the real crux of the song, and then everything else is just like, it's pleasant, it's there. It's something, again, like that I don't have a problem with, but it's just not quite as memorable. Track number 7, Survivor. I really enjoy this track just because it switches up the production a little bit. We've got a sort of nice ethnic instrumentals here that sound a little bit like either East Asian or African. And it really adds the flavor that I think this album needs more of. It can't all just be like the same kind of backing. She said that she has grandparents who live in Zambia, the country in Africa. She's mixed race, so I think her father or her mother, I can't remember which, is from Scotland. And then her, one of her parents is of African descent. And so she goes there frequently, and she wrote this song really being inspired by, the African experience, and feeling at peace and in touch with that. And again, I think the bridges are really shining on this record for her, because she really lets herself go, is really feeling that energy, admitting that, she's acted childishly in the past. She's, been blind to things she should have noticed, and that she should have had more faith in God or whatever. None of these songs are like, they're spiritual, but they're not religious in the same way that I would consider these Christian songs, even though she does reference God. It's very much universalist. I thank God that I'm surviving now, that I finally come around. That's all I can ask for. I put my hands to the sky, wipe the tears from my eyes. Thank God that I'm surviving. Again, not really much else I can say, but, you know, ain't that the truth? When you sometimes look at all the stuff you've been going through and you're just like, wow, I'm still surviving somehow. Like, I'm not even at the worst place I could be, and I've already had all this stuff happen to me. Like, that shows some strength. That shows, that's something to be proud of. Like, pat yourself on the back. And like a lot of these songs are sort of like telling you that, like, I know you don't feel like you deserve to feel proud or to feel inspired because you feel like you're a failure by society standards or what have you. But like, forget all that. Like, don't judge yourself by other people's standards, and like realize that, you probably have overcome some really tremendous, difficult stuff that a lot of people might not be able to say they have as well. So, and always, of course, stay humble, whether it's to an idea of spirituality or to, I don't know, being grateful is important. Remembering that, there's people that have helped you along the way. Track number 8, Extraordinary Being. One of the most lively and energetic songs on this record. It has a really staccato delivery, like it's very on the note, which is a nice sort of break of pace, I think, from the sort of very organically flowing tracks that we get, which are kind of big epic power ballads. This song has definitely got a little bit more of like almost like a retro disco sound at parts. I don't know how else to describe it, but it sounds like it's like a little 70s, and then got the neo soul kind of aesthetic going on, a little bit of hip hop in there. I think this song was used and to promote one of a movie that came out this summer, um, uh, X-Men or something. I don't follow those movies. It wasn't a Marvel movie. It was like Dark Phoenix. I don't know. It was a movie that came out like around the end of May or something. That was like this big, not Star Trek, but something similar. You know what I mean? You are a true perfection. Baby, you're made of stars. Don't let nobody tell you you're different. You are a lot of soul mixed with a lot of magic. Look how the sky turns gold every time you're dancing. Just let it flow. Look at you glow. You got to know that you're an extraordinary being. Again, how can you listen to this song and not feel motivated and inspired? It's like, yes, I am all these things. Same old feeling. I think this was definitely this sort of like nostalgia track that Emily really felt deeply to make about more sort of like a personal romance she's had. It's kind of nice in a way to hear her get a little bit more specific on certain songs, because a lot of these songs have been so broad, like a therapist basically telling you what you need to hear. And now she's like just singing about her own sort of feelings and emotions around seeing someone she hasn't seen in quite some time, or a relationship that's been off again, on again. She talks about how that gives you that same old 2003 feeling. So obviously it makes her feel like a teenager. That just something about that first true love that you can't, escape with this person. And this was one of the songs where I think her vocals really floored me. When she sings, "You give me that same old feeling," and it's got this traditional soulful melody. She sings, "Oh," and she really holds on to that and lets the rasp in her voice through. It makes her sound very professionally seasoned as a singer. That imperfection in her growl and her voice is just like so silky smooth and so inviting. Um, oh, you really know how to get this heart of mine beating. You give me that same old feeling. It's so comforting to just listen to her sing that. I just listen to that part, please, and like tell me that you're just not in love with her vocals there. Don't know how else to describe it, but there's just that rasp, and it's just like, Ah, so what this song needed. So what this song needed. Track number 10, I think, reminds me the most of her earlier records in that it's so stripped back and it's singing about, a couple who are trying to make it in the real world and dealing with real world problems. I mean, this album is called Real Life. And so, she's singing about basically how it's really fun in the honeymoon stage of a relationship. It's great, when we think about it in the abstract about us being together, the idealistic nature of a romance and a relationship. But what happens when, stuff really does hit the fan? What happens when things aren't so pretty, which is inevitable? When we have to feed the kids, we have to make sure we've got bread on the table. We have to make sure that, we're gonna be able to deal with disagreements and fights and things like that. So I want to know what it's like with you in real life. Will our love survive that? And of course, that's the ultimate test in a relationship. Very, very stripped back, soulful, sultry vocals. Um, you can't go wrong with it. Although I will say it's just not quite as memorable to me, like melodically, as some of her previous songs that she's made in this kind of vein. The closing track, Free as a Bird, the most cinematic and emotional track, I think, on this record for me. It was the one track that I think really lingered in my ears and in my mind. I've been tearing down the walls, kicking down the doors, burning all the boxes, because I'm a slave to only truth. I'm as wild as a wolf. You can't keep me from the mountains. I'm replacing all my demons for the sweetest songs of freedom. Last night I had a dream that I could fly. Now, baby, I'm as free as a bird. Not to be confused with the Nelly Furtado song, but a similar sentiment. Of course, the feeling of catharsis after a long, hard-fought battle with depression, with anxiety, with feeling not like you're fully yourself, and finally just coming to that sweet spot where you realize like what you really need and what you want out of life. And you feel like you actually know, and at least to some degree, how you're going to really make life the best it can be for you. And so the metaphors and everything are all, just describing that emotive sort of release of feeling of like, I'm not caged back anymore. I'm that uncaged bird, like a Maya Angelou poem. So a beautiful closing sentiment. Like it has some nice reverb, the echoes. It really does feel like outdoors, like a bird, like in the forests. And that was something I was definitely hoping to hear on this record. Something that really broadens the soundscape because a lot of this is like close and very like live sounding in a studio, but sometimes having that sound that feels like a little bit more like organic outside of the walls of the studio is like it's really easy to get lost in that world. And I think this song carries that beautifully with a really powerful melody as well. I think Free as a Bird, Sparrow, and Extraordinary Being are my favorite songs on this record, along with Survivor. And then probably Human would be another one, just because I really relate to like the lyrical, depiction of humanity and the melody. Um, and then, the whole record as a whole, like it's definitely a jam. It's not necessarily like always something I'm going to phone home about as like the greatest thing ever. But, I mean, Emily is just being herself, and she's not trying so hard. And I think that some of the, like I said, the pretense around the big producers and like making sure the song sounds a little bit urban or that it's going to cater to this demographic, it's going to feature this rapper. I'm not saying I don't love when she does things like that. Her second album was probably her most experimental and most hip hop in certain areas. And I loved that. I loved that she was getting so artfully experimental with the producers she was working with and like changing things up. But there was something about her first record that was just so like immediately grabbing because it was just so earnest and so powerful and simple in that way. And ultimately, I don't know if this record eclipses at all that first record, Our Version of Events. There's something classic about that album. It feels timeless. It just feels like it could never be dated in terms of its sound. Like it definitely feels like it sounds like an album that was made today or like 8 years ago at this point, but it doesn't get old. It ages like wine. This album, it's a worthy follow up, but is it as strong as her previous? Well, I definitely think it's on par with her second, but as far as her first record, if you haven't checked that one out, check out my review of it. Like, there's a lot to say about that record. It is glorious. This album's just a little bit more simple, honestly, at the end of the day. I feel like it could have been titled Simple Life. No, it's not, it's anything but in terms of the composition and construction, but in terms of the lyrics, and it's not for everyone. Some people might find it a little too vanilla or something. It's definitely not an album I could listen to like 16 songs of, like, especially the gospel stuff, like, because that just eventually all starts to sound a little bit the same. Like, I love it, but it's not something I need tons of songs to sound like. So those are my thoughts on Real Life. Definitely a worthy addition to her catalog. Something I definitely am going to, cling to in those dark moments. Just like it always brings that smile and that remembering, in a simple way, but like in a way that we still need that pat on the shoulder. It's like it's going to be okay. So I don't know what else really to say. I wish I could have say more profound stuff about it, but you know, the music speaks for itself. So let me know what you thought about this new record, and any Emily Sandé fans out there. I definitely think she is truly, truly horrifically underrated by the mainstream. Again, like I said, she's just not provocative enough, I guess, for that. Like, she's kind of old school, but she's still very fresh. Like, there's something so fresh about her, and she's full of life and full of light. And she's not pigeonholed necessarily just because she makes like a specific type of soul music. Like, she's still very kind of avant-garde and unique. And I'm always interested to see what she's going to do next. So definitely give the check a listen to, especially if you're a fan of Beyonce, because I mean there are a lot of similarities in terms of vocal deliveries and in terms of some of the R&B soul songs. And if you like Beyonce but you don't like Emily Sandé, I'm like, well, girl, I understand Beyonce brings, that other kind of energy that's like for the clubs and the dance floor. Like, I get that. Emily is not going to give you that on this album. She gives you that a little bit on her second album, but not on this album. And that's okay. But, there are songs in there that I think, should be just as big as Beyonce's song. But anyway, that's just me. That's just me. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this review. Thank you all so much for watching. And as always, peace, love, and light. Bye.